Greetings, fellow practitioners. Good to be here with you. I asked the tech team to put up in the chat that I do offer practice discussions. And if you're interested, you can contact me about that. And I also wanted to thank you for your comments, which have been very helpful. So today, we will gently lean into the factor of Nirodha, which is usually translated as cessation. When we're about to become an arahant, Nirodha means that we have completely stopped greed, hate, and delusion. But as I've been trying to demonstrate this week, it's really possible to take on these very advanced practices as beginners, because there's a whole spectrum of ways in which we can do it. So yesterday, we explored gently letting unwholesome tendencies fade away. That was viraga. And then Tuesday, we explored protecting our minds by a cozy seclusion from distractions while meditating. So today we'll experiment with stopping. I think it's important to remember that we're not glued to our unwholesome forces. And it's really good to know that as long as I'm mindful, I'm going to be okay. Because then we can, be present with full awareness in the moment, and we see when something unwholesome starts to arise, and we can say, no, stop, enough. So the work for the meditation this morning is not work. It should be more like tasting. We'll try to savor those moments, whether they're just very brief glimpses or they last for a few seconds, or maybe if you're really advanced, a few minutes, when the mind is quiet and undistracted, steady, and we're just here with our lived experience in this moment. So with that as an introduction, the invitation is to assume your meditation posture. And since we're on the theme of stopping today, I'm going to make a suggestion, but you don't at all have to follow it. But if you'd like to, it can be difficult for some people, but see if you can get through this whole half hour of meditation without moving once you've decided on the posture that you want to meditate in. So it's fine now to take a few moments to, see which way is up and see which way is down. And in the way that's down, get in touch with the center of the earth, which is holding on to us really nicely. And then as the meditation evolves, we'll do our best to let go of thinking, stopping thinking. And when we manage to do that for just an instant, we can celebrate. It's fine if you feel joyful, if you have a moment of peace. So closing the eyes and visualizing your posture so that the main centers of the body are in good alignment. The hara, or otherwise known as the dantian, the belly, as the foundational center. And then the heart chakra, resting vertically above that. And in balance with the belly and the heart center, the head center. Now take a long, deep inhale, followed by a long, peaceful exhale, noticing the transition spaces. And again, it's always nice, for me anyway, in my meditations, I like to begin with at least a brief minute of metta meditation to sort of create an atmosphere which has the flavor of kindness. Because I know how important it is to be kind to myself, to not be judgmental, like thinking I'm not a good meditator, or even worse, that I don't even have the right to attempt anything like awakening. So give yourself a moment to see if you can be aware of the whole body altogether, breathing. And at the same time, shower this precious body and mind, which is all we've got right now, with love and kindness and acceptance. We don't have to be any different than who we are to be on this path. May the heart be open. And may we have the wisdom to greet each moment with friendliness, not needing to turn away from anything or judge anything, knowing that it really is okay to be who we are with all our foibles. Because we're human. So with our best friend, Sati, mindfulness, awareness, as our protector, we make sure that she is right in front of us, meaning that she is our highest priority. I kind of like that in Pali, Sati is feminine. She's a great ally. So do your very, very best for the rest of this meditation period to keep her established within you. Mindfulness of the body, this body. Mindful of breathing. Connecting with the whole cycle of the breath. Mindful of Vedana, the feeling tone of our present moment experience, whether it's pleasant experience or an unpleasant, or we're not sure which it is. And when we've connected to the feeling tone of our lived experience, we invite rasa, which is the Pali and Sanskrit word for taste. We taste those feeling tones. We taste our lived experience. And with our awareness of tasting, we have some insight into our state of mind. Now we invite sati, our awareness, to be aware of our mind state. How's the mind in this moment? Just knowing it. We don't have to change it or fix it, but it is very helpful to be aware of it. Mindfulness of the mind. And now that we have put in place the first three of the Satipatthanas, awareness of the body, awareness of feelings, awareness of mind state, we can now invite our awareness to include dhammas. And dhammas are like mental objects. For example, the five hindrances. If that's meaningful for you, you might do a little checklist. See if any of those are present. Or the seven factors of awakening. Etc. One way of evoking satipatthana of mind objects that we could do this week is to consider viveka, seclusion from distractions. How's that going? We could investigate the mind object of viraga, dispassion fading away. How are we doing with viraga? Letting unwholesome qualities just fade away. And then Nirodha, cessation, stopping our tendencies to want to be anywhere else except in this moment. Keep practicing like this. And if these instructions sound like Greek to you, don't bother with them. Just do your practice the way you usually do it. That's fine. And if the mind should have jumped onto a thought train or a pleasure boat or a unpleasant adventure, this is the time to say, time out. Just take a pause from those distracting thoughts. The beauty and the fullness of the breath, the gratitude for being alive. That's plenty. And in the last few minutes of this meditation, let's take our state of mind, our loving heart, any kind of peace we may have garnered from not indulging thoughts, and offering that peace by radiating it out. So just imagine yourself as a candle, and you're able to radiate in all directions, in front, to the right, to the back, to the left, above and below. A sphere of peacefulness rippling outwards from your heart into the universe. Now, at the end of our practice, let's share the benefits of this beautiful path with all beings everywhere. May all beings be safe from harm. May all beings be easy and contented. May all beings be peaceful. And may all beings everywhere be free. Thank you for your practice. Greetings, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you, to share the Dharma with you, and to feel the vibes that are coming my way from your practice. I asked the tech team to put an announcement up in the chat that if you're interested, I do offer practice discussions, and you can contact me about that if you like. And I'd like to begin by correcting something that I said yesterday in the Q&A in response to a beautiful question about how does one recover from trauma. And I spoke about my own experience from the trauma of being physically and psychologically violently abused when I was a child. And the path that I went on included lots and lots of psychotherapy and help, including analyzing my dreams and a lot of professional help. And then there was a lot of support, especially from Suzuki Roshi and the community of practitioners at the Zen monastery in Tassajara, where I cried every single Zazen period. I didn't make any noise, but the tears were just streaming. And this was a kind of, a purification that I had to go through. And everyone was very sweet and accommodating and compassionate towards me. That was really helpful. And so, and then also in my case, since it was having to do with my parents, forgiveness became a big deal in letting go of trauma. So I think when I identified as a trauma victim, I was still bitter. And when I moved to being a trauma survivor, through the practice of forgiveness and understanding the sort of ancestral dimension of what we inherit, I was able to deeply forgive my parents, knowing that they did the best they could. And then in a practice discussion once, Gil helped me by suggesting that I just drop any identification with PTSD, with being a survivor, that it was not necessary for my identity. That was really helpful at that point in my practice. And then I mentioned that not all trauma comes from family history, as it was in my case, but I have a dear, beloved Dharma buddy named Francisco, who has become a marvelous teacher, who has shared a lot with me about the trauma that he went through in a devastating car accident where he was just smashed to smithereens. And in the Q&A, I kind of tried to guess what his process might have been like, but I regret having said that because I didn't hear it from his own lips. So I'd rather let him tell you if you're interested than, inventing what I think he might have been through. So forgive me for that. And then by request in the chat yesterday, for the list of the Pali words for what we're exploring this week, I'll talk about that today. And I need to give you a disclaimer that this is not a canonical list from the early Buddhist texts. It's one I put together for the purpose of teaching this week. And in addition, I add some of my own efforts at translating the terms into English. So Monday was Rasa. And Rasa in both Pali and Sanskrit, the root does mean taste. So literally it means to taste. And then more figuratively, it's the flavor of our experience or the savor. And then a really interesting sort of development in where we can go with tasting is the second meaning of rasa, which is essence. You know, like in perfumes, it's sometimes the essence of such and such. But that essence also means essential function. So in a way, we're tasting our essential function as humans, our experience, our ability to be sentient beings. How does that taste? So that was Monday. Then Tuesday was Viveka, which literally means separated. It's usually translated as seclusion, but I think a preferable translation would be independence. It also can mean solitude, detachment, disengagement, and interestingly, another meaning in Pali goes farther than that and takes viveka to also mean discrimination, understanding, true knowledge. So the Sanskrit root is very interesting also. The Pali root literally means separated, but the Sanskrit root means to sift, sort of like we're sifting grain or something. So the idea is having a clear sense of separation from the unwholesome. And according to the commentaries, it often implies seclusion from the hindrances. So a lot of times you may see, once a monastic was secluded from the hindrances, at that point they could go deeper in meditation. But I've taken the liberty of broadening that idea of seclusion to, in the context of our meditation, to seclusion from distractions. How do we, it's really very powerful to be able to leave our distractions on the shoe rack outside the door and to stay present. And then yesterday, we evoked viraga, which in Pali literally means away from desire. The fading of desire for something, or dispassion towards something, or detachment, or indifference. But the word raga in Pali also means color, hue, or a dye, like for dyeing cloth. And it might evoke the image of a blood stain on a pure white cloth that fades away by washing it and hanging it up in the sunlight. So we can take the stain to be a metaphor for the impurities of our mind, and the white cloth to be a metaphor for the purity, the innate purity of our mind, which we all have. but which we may not be experts at accessing. It's the treasure inside of us that all this work of meditation and mindfulness practice aims to reveal. But it's a beautiful image, I think, especially since the viraga fading away happens naturally. You know, wash it and let it dry in the sun. Healing through sunlight. So in Pali, it also goes farther than dispassion to also mean leaving aside infatuation or lust or passion. Like I said, there's often a whole spectrum of meanings for these dhammas, these Pali mind objects. And then today, and I see that the clock is ticking, the theme is Nirodha, which literally means without obstruction. And it's usually translated as cessation. The ending or termination, finishing, enfin. And both the Pali and the Sanskrit roots are the same. It comes from rud, meaning obstruction. So the commentary says it also means release from imprisonment or confinement, being locked up. And in the Chinese agamas, translating the Pali texts into Chinese, the character given to represent Nirodha is stop and see. Two characters, stop and see, together. So that's the value of stopping. If we can stop long enough, we can see what our foibles are. We can see what our temptations are. And with that, we have the freedom to make a choice, whether we want to go that way, or maybe we want to just be peaceful. So, yeah, we stop long enough to be able to see what's happening with the clarity of an open, quiet, and steady mind. So tomorrow we will look at Vosaga, meaning relinquishment. And the homework for today, if you're so inclined, is to stop from time to time to observe the mind and to see if there are any obstructions you need to remove from your path of practice so that you can continue on your wholesome journey to end suffering. Thank you. And a last announcement is that I learned just today that a revolution is happening in the Theravada forest tradition. Used to be called the Thai forest tradition, but now there's a kind of official new breakthrough, which is I remember when I first moved back to California after living 40 years in France. It was a full moon night, and the first thing I did was drive up to Abayagiri to meditate with the monks all night long in the moonlight. And at one point, the next day, I had an opportunity to ask Ajahn Pasano a question, and I asked him, what's the problem with bhikkhuni or ordination? Why don't you monks here support that? I was kind of indelicate on my part, which that's kind of who I am, stepping in the puddle. But he really got it, and he really replied beautifully, saying that the hierarchy of the lineage in Thailand is old guys, and they're unlikely to change, and so it will require, gradually they'll die and they'll be replaced by more moderate officials in the Thai forest tradition. So what's happening is that Ajahn Pasano has sort of been able to put in motion this revolution. And specifically what that means is that there's going to be a monastery in the Seattle area gathering around Ajahns Nisabo and Kovilo, and yes, including bhikkhunis, Ananda Bodhi, Santusika, and Chitananda. So I'm getting goosebumps telling you about it. I have so much mudita. And in the chat, there's the link. So excuse me for going over time. And if you're interested in joining the Q&A and you're watching from YouTube, you're welcome to transition over to Zoom. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Meg. So if anyone has any questions or comments, you can either put them in chat or you can raise your hand in Zoom. And while we're kind of waiting for people to collect their thoughts, there was a question on YouTube yesterday, and it asked, the person asked if you could touch on how to be in a contemplative mind skillfully without leaning into a ruminating inclination. So I don't know if you want to touch on that, Meg.
I tried to touch on that at the end of our discussion yesterday in the Q&A, I think, and okay. I think it's recorded. I mean, it's up there.
Okay, great.
But anyway, if not, I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to switch to gallery. Wait. Okay. Oh, these beautiful faces.
Hey, Marilyn, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Good morning from Charlottesville, Virginia. And I'm so happy about what you just said. So I just want to thank you for sharing that and bringing in all that other stuff. I guess I don't know what to call it. But yeah, my other comment was just to sort of say, like, I did really appreciate your sharing about how we transform our suffering and how much like that, I just kind of had an insight yesterday when you were talking about how like, I guess the compassion for your parents comes in, and how like I have a similar experience that, and I've never understood it before. Like I used to feel so much pain, but now when I sort of think about that suffering, like I'm overwhelmed by like compassion for the people who hurt me and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like I've never understood it. I've like I'll be trying to explain it to people, and then I'm like, I don't know what's happening to me now.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Marilyn. I'm crying. I actually was on a retreat with Gil in May at IRC, my first residential retreat in 3.5 years, and boy, was it wonderful to have that seclusion. And that sort of came to my mind because it at one point Gil asked us to, he was doing a guided meditation, and he asked us to go into the place in our body where we identify as the self, where we reside. And for me, it was just right away the heart center, and I started crying. And it was really it was amazing, because at Tassajara, I was, when I was 21, I was crying out of pain, just raw pain. And that's a purification process that I had to go through. And this time at IRC, I was crying with compassion for my poor parents, who must have had an even more difficult childhood than I did. And so that transition from raw pain to compassion, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I just went through it myself. It's really amazing when it happens. And I think, that's also part of the purification process. It's kind of like growing up into compassion from being angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, that again, just I'm so moved, and I will be, just be metabolizing this week. So thank you again.
Sure. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I guess we can also take this opportunity to thank our wonderful kind of like editor team that we've got that have kind of been stepping in this week. There's Dimitra, Job, Julie, and Kevin H. They've been helping out this week. Like Julie's been helping to post some of the announcements in chats, and everyone else has been kind of pitching in to help out with the audio editing for our guest teachers, and then the video editing for the YouTube videos. So thank you to the entire team.
You guys are really a crack team. You're not just amateurs. You're pretty savvy about all this stuff, and I'm very grateful to you for what you've taught me about teaching on Zoom. So thank you.
Thank you. While we're waiting to see if anyone else has any other comments, it's kind of, I don't know if this would help anybody, but I actually, like, now that you kind of mentioned Francisco, I actually had the chance to talk to him once when we were doing a Zoom live stream, and we were talking about back pain. And he was saying that, I asked him, well, how did you get over yours? It sounds like 100 times worse than what I go through. And he just kind of simply said, oh, I just meditated. So that was really cool to hear. Oh, it sounds simple.
Yeah, that's sort of what I read into, so what I guessed yesterday was probably accurate, but still I didn't want to just leave it at that. Yeah. Yeah, he just went deep into his meditation. I think that's pretty safe to say. Okay.
Hey, Bill, you got the floor.
Thank you. Once in my entire Buddhist career, my mind got so still for an extended period of time, like 6.5 hours, that my back pain completely disappeared. Not a trace of it. So
Yeah.
only once, but now I know it's possible at least. But what I really raised my hand to say is hearing people talk about their imperfect upbringings and their imperfect parents. It's such a common story.
Yeah.
Certainly, true for me. So I had a little bit to overcome. Like 20 years of depression. Very common. I hear it from other people all the time. Not all the time, but often enough. My reaction to that is just to look around me as I go through the world. And if I see people unhappy, realize what a common thing this is, and just kind of feel compassion for. It makes it easier. Understanding this makes it easier for me to feel compassion for other people who may be acting up, are not doing well in one way or another, and for their parents and their parents. So the whole society. It's in a way, being happy and relating well to other people. It seems so simple. Just let go, man. Just let go. But in practice, it does seem to be hard, doesn't it? So anyway, I just wanted to mention this way of relating to the world a little bit better because of understanding of what people have gone through.
Thank you so much for sharing that, dear Bill. And I remember, I started practicing with a wonderful Zen master at the age of 21. Well, I'm 76. That looks like 55 years of practice. But, I'm just kind of, starting out in a way. And it's true. And I can remember over the years thinking, if almost every retreat I would go on, I would be so frustrated with myself because I know that I don't want to go down the river on that pleasure boat of thinking or planning or whatever. And yet it keeps coming back. And I just think, Meg, anyway, for some of us, it takes a really long time.
Well, I've only been doing this 21, 22 years. So
yeah, that's pretty decent.
I got a late start. I didn't find the Dharma till age 48 or 9. Really late start. So there's hope for me, huh?
The Buddha, he said there was hope for everybody. I mean, he gave Angulimala ordination, so.
Yeah, yes.
He was for those of you who are not familiar, he was this mass murderer at the time of the Buddha who wore a necklace of 999 fingers because his goal, which was imposed upon him by his own spiritual teacher, was to kill 1,000 people in order to become enlightened. And he only had one person to go, and it was going to be the Buddha anyway. And instead of him being able to kill the Buddha the way he was able to overpower everybody else, whoever he ever came across, the Buddha got the best of him and then showered him with compassion and ordained him as his own disciple. So, if Angulimala can do it, so can, and he did become an arhat in his lifetime. So if Angulimala can do it, being that evil, we haven't killed 999 people, so there's hope for all of us.
Thank you.
Okay, Leila, you got your hand raised.
I'm curious about, because in the Vedanas, I find neutral to be such a powerful state. And I just wonder, is it similar to Nirodha? It's like a cessation. I'm just curious, but I think it's under supported or underrated neutral.
And what's the rest of your mind like when you're in a neutral feeling tone?
Well, the whole state feels like, like a kind of relief. And this it reminds me of Thich Nhat Hanh's celebration of I don't have a toothache.
Nice.
But it seems like, I don't know, I celebrate neutral, and I
think that's a great contribution to our discussion, because I may be wrong, but I don't remember reading anything like this in the canonical texts, that neutral Vedana was a good thing. It's usually, in the commentarial tradition, it's usually strongly associated with delusion. And but I think that you're absolutely right. If in your case, it feels like a relief, and you're not just escaping from going after pleasure or going away from pain, and you just don't know which. I think that's a very positive way and instructive way that you found yourself to appreciate when you have neither pleasure nor pain. And congratulations, that's like becoming your own teacher,
Well, and I know, because I work with trauma with myself and with people, and the trauma is really big, and sometimes resourcing to access anything that might feel like pleasure just feels inaccessible. But to move from an overwhelmed trauma state to neutral is a doable movement. That actually offers something other than the vortex.
It's a door opener for you, and it's a valid door opener for you. And so this is something that we need to take from the Buddha's example also, is that it wasn't one teaching for everybody. It was a different teaching for each disciple and for each situation with that disciple. And in fact, at some point, it's really up to each of us to have the wisdom, the discernment, to be able to wisely know that this is a good thing. This is wholesome. And that's kind of what we were talking about yesterday with viraga, letting our unwholesome tendencies just kind of quietly fade away. And, it sounds like your feeling tones of desire and aversion just sort of faded away, and you were left with a nice open door.
It's almost a gateway to equanimity.
Exactly. Perfect. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that. Thank you for bringing that to the discussion.
Okay, I think we don't have anyone, we don't have any other comments or questions in chat or
Great.
So thank you for your
Okay.
teachings today, Meg. And as we kind of sign off today, if anyone wants to come off mute and say goodbye or well wishes, please feel free to do so. Thank you, Meg.
And thank you,
Thank-
Kevin, and all the tech folks.
Yeah.
Really, really indebted to you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Meg.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for the
Meg.
question. And it's very
Thanks so
nice.
much.
Yeah, my
Mm.
pleasure.
Yes, thank you for that opportunity to converse.
Yeah, nice. I appreciate it too.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.